Hey guys, what's up? This is Dan here, and I've decided to just start my audio capturing software and talk a little bit about Fallout. Now, you could say that this is going to be a Fallout review, and I think it probably will end up being a review at some point. And I've always wanted to move in and do reviews. However, the whole idea of writing and scripting something out maybe kind of put me off a little bit. So I've literally just got my computer on in front of me. I haven't written anything down. I've just got a couple of ideas of some of the things that I do want to talk about Fallout. And they are things that I think are pretty important if you are, looking for some kind of review about Fallout. So these are kind of just going to be my opinions. And yes, I will be putting videos and stuff in the background so you can, so I can illustrate some of the points that I'm making. But as I say, I do want to get into reviews, and this is going to be my way of dipping my toe into the water of reviews. So, please let me know what you think. So Fallout come out last year, won a hell of a lot of Game of the Year awards, or at least nominated for a lot of Game of the Year awards. And in the most part, I would agree that they deserve all the praise that they got. For the hype that was going around Fallout, I think a lot of people have felt as if the game didn't quite deliver to the standards that they thought it was going to upon review. I think when we first got it, everyone was just so super psyched to finally get it. And, the way the world was built and presented was something that it was phenomenal. It was something that we finally, we got after so long. And, but there are some cases in which I think Fallout, at least in my opinion, didn't quite hit the mark that I was hoping that it was going to. And, it's a shame. It really is. The first, I'm going to kind of talk about each of these in different segments so I don't just kind of wane from one area to the other. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the story. Of course, I'm not going to spoil anything, late game like stuff, because obviously I'm sure, as I still... I've got like a couple of bits to do, so I wouldn't want anyone to spoil it for me. Now, story, and I know the thing is with a lot of Bethesda games is that the story is always kind of not overly important. It is just kind of an ever-present string that moves through the game just to tie the player to some kind of progression. There always has to be a main storyline, and the whole point of that is just to drag them through the world. They're not the most compelling stories. If you go back to Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, even Skyrim in a way, the main storyline, as well as not being overly long in terms of time that you'd have to play to complete it, it's never really the most compelling story in the world. It's not the strongest storyline, and there's a lot of people who would argue that games don't really have great storylines anyway, but because it's not overly story-driven, I can understand why, and I wouldn't use that as a crutch to beat the game with. However, one thing that a lot of Bethesda games tend to do, and a lot of games in general actually do this, is that they give the impression of freedom in the storyline. And to use an example, this is very early on in the game, and it's literally like one of the first things that happens, so I wouldn't class this as spoiler. If you haven't played the game at all, then stop watching. But when you come out of the vault originally, the first thing that you do is you move to an area in which you find these people called the Minutemen. And throughout my playing, like I've played the game, especially the beginning of the game, twice now, and there was no way to not side with the Minutemen. And when I played it the second time, my whole sole objective was just to find my son, and I didn't want to buy into all of these vying factions in the game, and I wanted to just see how well the game would stand up if I just went into these situations and was like, I don't care about you, I want to find my son. I don't care, I don't want to help you, I just want to find my son. And I felt that there's certain ways where it just doesn't allow you to do that. It just doesn't allow you to... it doesn't allow that freedom. As I say, it gives the impression of freedom. And you have to play ball to a certain extent to do it. Now, again, this is very difficult to kind of blame Fallout for this, because the first time I played it, when I got to where the Minutemen were, I was like, cool, yeah, I'll help. I'll do this, I'll do that. because that's the way the game wants you to play. But I just find is if you don't play ball and if you do try and take liberties in a way, the game does kind of fall apart a little bit, and it does that throughout the game. It does that in later stages, which I obviously don't want to talk too much about. So as I say, I think the story is solid enough. It is, I guess, interesting enough. There are some twists along the way which kind of keep me interested, and once certain twist happens, it really makes you want to play the game a lot to try and find out more information about that. And I think at times the level of information that it gives you is rationed out a touch. So you can't quite get, say, like if you want to speak to one character, you can't find every single bit of information out about that character there and then, and you have to come back at a later time. So maybe after the next mission you can find out a little bit more information. But again, I don't think that's down to the story design. I think that's down to the dialogue, his system in the game. So we'll move on to the dialogue system next. Was very, very happy with it. I'm probably one of the few people who actually enjoyed it, just because I've always played on console. So I've played it on the Xbox One and the PS4, and when I was playing Fallout 3, I thought at times it was too slow to go through each individual, combat dialogue option just to ask a question or to answer a question. And it was very long and convoluted, and they've extremely streamlined that, like with just the face buttons now. So you just push A, X, Y, or B, and then it keeps conversation flowing quickly and things like that. However, you could argue that it is dumbed down slightly now. It is dumbed down actually, and sometimes you can't quite gauge what the actual answer is going to be. So, say for example, no problem. There was one point in the game where I was speaking to a character, and A was like something along the lines of "I don't believe you." And instead of actually accusing them of lying, you were like, I don't believe you, but I'll go along with it. And it's like, well, I didn't think that that's what that was going to say. There was no way to know what the overall tone of that dialogue option was actually going to convey. So, I guess that's absolutely, that's fine, I guess. I know there's a couple of mods on the PC which revert the dialogue system back to the old one, so I think it is easily fixed. But, of course, we're not going to really be talking about mods as such in this review. Of course, as well, the character is now fully voiced. People had opinions on that. I don't really... excuse me? I don't really care. I really don't care. It's fine. The voice acting is pretty good, and I just don't really have an opinion on it. Next of all is the gameplay itself. It's normal fare for a Bethesda game. I guess some people are now at a point where they have said that the engine is dated, and kind of the process of playing a Bethesda game is now being done to death, and we need something new. Personally, I really like it. I really do. I think the exploration is kind of smooth in a way. Like, coming from New Vegas and coming from Fallout 3, I just feel like it is an improvement. I think in terms of the control scheme, I play with a Xbox Elite controller, and I've mapped some of the buttons to the paddles on the back, and it's just so easy to play. Like, not in a difficulty way, because of course you can raise the difficulty as much as you want, and it gets ridiculous the higher levels that you push it. But I just feel as if the controls, like, everything operates the way I would want it to operate. I didn't feel at times that, the character felt sluggish or navigating certain areas was difficult. I felt like it was fine. It was absolutely fine. It was smooth. It was an improvement. The speed of getting into the Pip-Boy was a lot faster. The navigation within the Pip-Boy seemed to make sense, except for the mod system, but we're going to talk about that later on. I think the way the mods worked in your Pip-Boy was a little bit strange. But yeah, I thought it was great. I think there are some times where you think there's some concepts about the game that that are outdated in a way, and the way like the scripting of the game works and things like that. You know, how you go and gain new weapons and how you evolve, how your character evolves over time is different, or is lackluster compared to some other games. But I disagree. I really do. I think the idea of the legendary enemies, so you'll fight a legendary version of a Mirelurk, for example, and when you defeat it, you would get a legendary bit of equipment or a legendary weapon, which would, you know, have unique properties that'll only exist for that weapon. And I found that really fun. I found that interesting enough that I could actually go and, instead of, like, of course you get frightened when you see a legendary enemy, and of course you fight more and more of these legendary enemies on higher difficulties, like their appearance rate just goes through the roof. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Oh no, I've got to fight, you know, a legendary Mirelurk, but hang on, if I kill it, I might actually get, you know, something well worth the fight. A lot of the times it isn't worth it, I will admit, but it's the chance, it's the fact that you would, you know, you really like weigh up that risk and reward over fighting something, and you really get that, you know, excitement when you finally kill it and you run over and see what it dropped. I think the next of all, we're going to talk about the world of Fallout. So it's based in, I guess, Massachusetts, in Boston, and the Commonwealth, I think, is wonderful. It is. Again, at first, I think the size of the map was under duress a little bit. I think they felt that the map was far too small, but I honestly find that it's populated enough to remain interesting. I think a lot of the different areas that you go to, as in when you're going through downtown, I guess Boston, or when you go to Diamond City, or if you go to like the water, like when you go to the sea and there's shipwrecks that you can go and explore. I think there's just so much. There's so much there, and there's so much variety that I am just loving it. And I think even now, you know, probably 100 hours into the game, there's still areas that I haven't gone to. You know, when you go to the glowing sea, and it's just, it's unreal, because nowhere else is like that in any of the Fallout games that I've, you know, experienced. So there was always something new. I think the characters that were there were again fine. Some of them were great, some of them were not so great, but overall, like, it was definitely interesting enough to travel this land, and you know, when you're traveling around and you can actually, you know, you feel as if you're exploring, and there's always something to find, or there's always something to do, and I love that. I love it, and that's the whole point. That's the point of Fallout. A couple of things that I guess I wasn't so happy with was in the leveling system. Now, the way this has been done is that there's no level cap now, and obviously the way your specials work is you put points into your specials, which unlock certain perks for that special tree. So, for example, I always put a lot into intelligence just because it increases the amount of XP I earn. So now when I level up, I can go all the way down to the highest level in intelligence, because my intelligence is 10. So I unlock all 10 perks of that perk tree. Whereas, let's say in luck, I don't have a lot of luck, so I only have access to the first level of the luck perk. But now what you can do is you can spend your points to upgrade your special level, as well as, or instead of buying a perk. So really, you could have spent the first however many levels of the game just filling out your specials. So each special had 10. And again, because there's no level cap, every time you level up, you will gain a point. So technically, you can max out every skill. I don't really see how it could do that, because I'm quite near the end of the game now, and I'm level 47, I think, and I've still got so many things to get, and I don't really want to get everything. Like, of course, there's still the most important things that you want to find, like your lockpick and your hacking, you know, your rifleman perk. But because of the way this game is, things like crafting are now so important, and there are so many perks that you can unlock for crafting. There's gunsmith, there's armorer, there's science, and they cost about 15 levels worth of points to max out. which is a huge investment. It really is. And I guess it all goes towards being able to put a jetpack on your power armor, which is probably the coolest thing in the world. But however, would I want to submit 15 levels of my character development to that? Not so much. I guess next of all, we can talk about the crafting system. Of course, let's start with the cool thing. You can make power armor. The power armor is completely different now. It's not just armor, it's more like a vehicle. The damage resistance is great. The way the UI changes when you're inside the power armor is stupendous. And all in all, I think it's absolutely brilliant, especially the more you move through the game, because the power armor has a fusion core that you need to use to power it. And at first, the fusion cores are getting quite short supply, but I went through about 70% of the game without really using a power armor, and I'm starting to use it more and more towards the end, which means that I have about 30 of them, which also means I can just use a power armor all day and not worry about the power system failing, which is fantastic. Some of the bad things about the crafting, it is hella confusing. You've got to go and get a lot of junk in the game, so all that Abraxo cleaner and magnifying glasses and things of that nature, and you use that to build different parts of it. You use it, to build different parts of the gun, and it drastically changes the gun, which is great in theory. If you remember the Fallout reveal and you saw them just turning a handgun into a sniper rifle, or like an energy sniper rifle, it was a sight to behold. However, it doesn't work that way because a lot of the mods are so expensive in terms of the materials that it uses. So things like fiber optics are so hard to come by that it's just you're not able to really drastically modify an energy weapon, because you have to just pick a very specific item and then you need to go back out and find more. That's always the way. Yes, there are some dealers in the world that will sell some of the items in bulk, but they do cost a hell of a lot, and again, even they're in pretty short supply. I guess the biggest problem I had was the armor system, like the base armor, because again, I didn't quite I don't know whether it's the game's fault for not teaching me or my fault for being an idiot, but a lot of the times I just didn't quite understand how I was getting better armor, or some of the perks that the armor had. It was just a little bit convoluted to me. Like, it was damage resistance versus weight versus energy resistance versus, and I was just like, I just want to wear the stuff that's best. I don't care why it's better. I'd just like to know that it is better. And it does say that in some cases, when you are looting a body, for example, and if there's a bit of armor there that is better than your current armor, there will be a plus next to it. However, sometimes I didn't quite understand how this armor was better, if in terms of damage resistance it was less, you know what I mean, and things like that. Again, there's legendary armor, so there was some leg armor that would increase my special strength and endurance skill by 1, which again is phenomenal, and I found it really difficult at times to get rid of them because because I would then be encumbered. Finally, talking about the crafting, when we were talking about mods before, the idea of rebuilding a base is great. I think there are too many bases in the game to actually be useful. I think really I only used 3 bases throughout the game, and as actual bases, and it was only because they were at opposite ends of the map, and the way I was playing the game, I was trying to not fast travel as much and try and get back to a base when I was finished doing whatever I was doing. The fact that you can, increase the level of a base technically by improving the quality of life in there, and the fact that you can build artillery turrets or laser guns to defend it is great. Again, none of my big settlements got attacked at all during the game, so it was a little bit difficult, and it was a little bit it was a pain to try and put so much money into defending it, and most of the time I only built a load of turrets just for aesthetic reasons. I knew that I weren't going to get attacked, and it was fine. The fact that you can build trade caravans going from one place to another, which again took me a while to understand, means that you can share the resources between all of your settlements, which is great. So if you want to go and build a weapon, you don't have to just go back to the original base where you've got all of your items. You just go to any one of the settlements which are connected via that trade route, which is great. Very, very good. Big fan of that. Let's move to combat, shall we? This is long. I didn't realize it was going to take so long. We're going to go to the combat system. I don't use VATs. I can talk a little bit about VATs, but I don't use it myself. So I play the game just as a first-person shooter, and I like it. I don't mind it. I think a lot of people expect it to handle a lot better, but I think some people need to like kind of remember that it is an RPG. It has FPS elements, and it's not the best shooter. It's not the worst shooter. You know, there's some FPSs which handle a hell of a lot worse than Fallout. But I think people want a little bit too much from it, in my opinion. However, I think it is adequate. You can play it, no problem. There are some times when I'm using a laser gun when I'm like, I couldn't miss. You know what I mean? Like you're a foot away from a character and you blast 5 bolts over his head. That happens, but again, that happens everywhere. So I'm not too bothered about that. The VAT system, as far as I've used it, is exactly the same as the previous VAT system. However, there is one little addition, which is the critical meter, which is the more times you shoot in VATs, the critical meter builds up, and that's based off your luck perk. So obviously, the more luck you have, the higher critical, the higher it builds, and the more damage you do from it. And then when you go and shoot in VATs, if you've got a full critical meter, you can push X, and your next shot will be a critical shot. That's very good. I only ever use VATs now when I have a critical meter, so I can get a good shot off if need be, and basically use VATs just as a backup. So the world itself, and I'm talking purely aesthetical now, I'm not talking about like traveling or locations, I'm more about the look and the sound. And we're going to get right into it because, let's be honest, a couple of RPGs come out this year, most notably The Witcher 3, and it was heavily noted for its unbelievable graphics. And yes, I cannot lie, it was a beautiful looking game. However, I do not feel as if the Fallout series should lose any marks just based purely on visuals, because let's be honest, it's not for that. That's not, like, it doesn't look bad. I guess relatively it can look bad against other games, and yes, this is the gaming industry, and that's exactly how games get rated, is based off of other games. Let's be honest. I think it looks fine. It looks a hell of a lot better than Fallout 3 and New Vegas, so it's definitely a step up. The locations are just so beautifully crafted. I love how the fact that every panel on the wall of certain buildings are unique. The guns, I think, do look great. I think, you know, just the character building is a lot better. It still isn't great. You know, the faces still look weird, and when they talk, it's a little bit out of sync. But, you know, the most important thing for me, as you know, is audio. I am a sucker for audio, and let me just say that the music in Fallout is tremendous. It always has been. Like, how they capture the barrenness of the environment in the music is always something that is always just, it's a benchmark for me. It's up there with Red Dead Redemption for how music can showcase the abandoned emotion of the world. Is absolutely spot on. Sound effects wise, I think the footsteps are standard, except when you're in the power armor. The power armor sounds big and meaty, which is what you want it to. The guns sound unreal. Try firing a 50 caliber sniper rifle, just so you know. The laser guns have a lot more weight to them than they did in the previous ones, which I think actually gives them a little bit more authority. I know that might sound silly, but you don't want to go around using a gun that sounds, you know, like a spud gun. So the laser guns actually have a lot more weight to them, and I think, in my opinion, are a hell of a lot better. And yeah, you know, you can still get the alien gun. You know, an alien spaceship still crashes, sounds phenomenal. The explosions and cars still create little nuclear explosions, which is cool. I'm a big fan of. And yeah, I guess that's it. They were the only subjects that I wanted to talk about. The achievements, let's talk about the achievements briefly. They are fine. They're definitely doable. As with all Fallout games, you've just got to put a good few hours into it to get them. I'm currently about 700 points. I just have to now just do a couple of clean-up achievements, get all the bobbleheads and whatnot. The inclusion of the bobbleheads was of course an absolute must in this game, and let's be honest, if they weren't bobbleheads, it wouldn't be a Fallout. But I guess my review overall is it's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's the best game in that series. Yes, comparatively to other RPGs or other shooters, it might not stack up. But in my opinion, I just don't care. At the end of the day, it's a Fallout game. I love Fallout. I love the aesthetics of Fallout. I love the comedy, in a way, like the dark comedy that Fallout has. Remember that Fallout 1 was quite comedic in its way. And yeah, I just think it's great. Like, it is exactly what you'd expect it to be, and I think the problem is some people just didn't like that. They wanted to be wowed by it, and I just don't think it was. It wasn't that. It was an absolute perfect addition to the series, but, you know, it didn't improve enough, I think, to get the overall awards or the plaudits that I think it does deserve. As I say, if you look at The Witcher 3, The Witcher 3 is absolutely well and truly above anything else in that series, and thus stood out. And sadly, I just don't think Fallout did that. But I loved it, and I think it's something that you should get. And I think it will go down well. And I'm already looking forward to the next one and the next Elder Scrolls game. It's going to be so good. But I'm going to end it here. I hope you enjoyed this. This is my first, I guess, hacked job at a review. Hopefully you'll like it. I'll try and make it more concise in the next one, because I literally just pushed go and started talking, as I usually do, but I will start creating more guidelines in the future. But this has been Dan. You've been watching a PIAV review of Fallout 4, and I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.